One day, I guess they just couldn't take it any longer. It was about, looked to be about 20 carloads of policemen from the city. And they knocked the doors in, they kicked the doors in, and they rushed us with guns drawn. I told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad about that. And he said, brother, he said, if you all had a turn to run, he said they would have shot you all in the back, and they would have justified the cause. But we didn't turn and run. That's the thing about this. It was different. We did not turn to run. We called on God for His help and His assistance. And God helped us to fight back that attack. We all had to fight. I mean fight. It was a bloody fight. All the men, including myself, all of the women, all of the children, we had to fight for survival. They pulled out guns, and they had automatic rifles, and they were pulling the triggers. I didn't know what was going on. I know we heard a lot of clicking, and when I told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad about it, he said God had them. God had them. They could not shoot one of us, even though the weapons they had, they were weapons of destruction, and they came to destroy us. But when we saw that God was with us, our faith in Him caused us to fight even harder. Oh yes, we lost one. But you can believe until this day, they'll remember the whooping that we put on them. But the thing of it, there's some point in your life where you're just not going to take an ass whooping. But you're not going to take that. There's some point in your life that you're just going to have to stand up and be a man or be a woman. And so this was one of those points. They came to kill us, and we defended ourselves. They tried to hang me by my tie. Took my tie over the rafter and tied it so that the knot would get tighter around my neck and choke me to death. I must admit that it was tightening. And yes, I was about to black out, and my tie broke. By God's grace, my tie broke, and I fell back down to the floor. So we fought and fought all the way out to the front door. Apparently they sent for backup, and they sent for the National Guard. They handcuffed us all and took us first to the hospital and then to jail. We got word to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our leader, what had happened, what had occurred. And he immediately sent our Supreme Captain and National Secretary down to investigate, to see what had gone on. I got 6 years in the state penitentiary at Angola. I was awakened by big floodlights. And when I would come awaken, I would see a crowd around me. And they were all taking my pictures. They were from the media. They were from all of the law enforcement agencies all over this country. Some from Europe, Germans, etc. Come to take my picture to see just who I was. And they did this every night for about a week, taking my picture in that 4x4 cage. And like in the movies, I really deep down inside knew that it was coming. There's always a group, like in them old westerns, that will storm a jail or take whoever it is in there out and lynch it. I knew that that was coming. I kind of felt it, you know. And one night they did. I would say from, it looked like 20 or more carloads. So they shackled me. They put a chain around my neck with the chain coming down to my hands and handcuffed me. And then another chain going down to put cuffs around my legs. And they made a left on the road that goes to Jackson. They made a left out into the swamps. I won't forget this. They made a left and they drove approximately 2 blocks back into the swamps. And there into the swamps is where all of the cars parked. And then the door opened for me to get out. They couldn't hardly wait for me to get out before they start hitting me with them nightsticks in their fists. They got those big buckles, them big cowboy buckles with a bull on it, or a bronco or something on it, with them cowboy boots they wear. And they took, some of them took those belts off, and they doubled the belt so that the buckle would hit me. They would hit me with the buckle on the belt, and they knocked big chunks of flesh out of my back and big chunks of flesh out of my buttocks. They dragged me on out in the swamps. I tried to fall back, but he turned me back over on my stomach. And they forced me down on my stomach. And then one stood on my head and my shoulders. Another one stood right at the back of my shoulders to the bottom, right at the beginning of my buttocks, and another one on my buttocks. It was 3 on me, from my buttocks to my feet. They stayed on me until they were convinced that I was dead. Now I have to mention this because I feel as though that I was prepared for this. I was a lifeguard at 13. Would you believe that? I was a lifeguard, a Red Cross lifeguard at the age of 13. I learned how to swim in the Arkansas River. This is where I learned to swim, in this dirty Arkansas River. And we used to practice holding our breath. Listen at this. We used to practice playfully, holding our breath. And I used to dive in on this side, and I could hold my breath and come up way, look like middle way. You know, I just learned how to hold my breath to that degree and swim. Everyone said I could swim like a fish. This is why I say that I believe that I was really prepared for that. Even though they held me down to my limit, I was, you know, blacking out and beginning to take on water, just a little at a time, you know. And they got up off my body. They got up off my body. And all of them got in their cars. I could hear the car door slamming. And the motors cranking up. I could hear that. And I eased up. I turned over and I came up stomach first. Just enough to stick my nose up out of the water to try to get some air. And then, in the meantime, try to see too. You understand what I'm saying? In the meantime, try to see. I crawled on my stomach all the way back out to the highway where they had made the left to come in. And I laid out on the highway. Well, I was practically dead anyway, but I was thanking God, you know, because I was still alive. Even though I was weak and bleeding, I'm still alive. And I'm thanking God. Thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, for me to still be alive and able to crawl. So I crawled all the way back. It took me some time because I couldn't stand up. And so I just kept crawling until I got out to the highway, and I just laid out on the highway. And the first vehicle to come upon me was a Greyhound bus. Now, would you believe who the driver was? The driver was one of the first black bus drivers that Greyhound had hired. First black bus driver that Greyhound had hired. He stopped the bus, looked right down over me, got out of the bus, came around, looked at me, got down on his knees, and raised up my head and laid my head in his lap. And with tears coming out of his eyes, he told me, I know what happened. Because I've seen many that go in them swamps, they don't come out. That was the lynching swamp. This is where all that was lynched and drowned was back there. Them bones are still back there. Hangings, them bones are still back there where I was. And by God's grace, I'm the only one that he ever knew to go in them swamp black and come out alive. Even though I was bleeding, even though I was weak, but by God's grace and my faith in him. I never did lose faith in God. Never. I never did lose faith in what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had taught me. No, because it was because of his teaching that enabled me to endure that. Because if I had been a whiskey drinker or a cigarette smoker, do you understand what I'm saying? I got to bring it back here. I got to look at it from this perspective, because this is what conditioned me, so that I would be able to overcome this, to live and tell it. I'm here now with you and you because by God's grace. God. They took me to a medical facility there on campus, and they doctored on me for 2 days. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent our secretary, and some of us call him head deacons, but we call him supreme captain, you know, down to see what had happened and to bring me to him. I'm telling you this, and it was at this time of our annual convention, because he paraded me across the stage to the world. Because media always tried to criticize him concerning what he would say about racism and how black people was treated in this country. And they want to refute that. They said, no, it doesn't happen like that. But I was living proof that it still happens, that it still exists. And he was so angry. I've never seen him that angry. He was so angry. And he said a prayer before the world that he wanted God to revenge my death. There, right then. And he prayed that prayer before the world, standing right there on that stage. And 10 minutes later, a helicopter at O'Hara took 9 of the greatest and most brilliant brains of Caucasians on board, took them up to its height and crashed and killed them all. that moment. At that moment. Now listen to this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked me, would I return? Now you examine yourself. All that I had been through. Listen, listen. Do you hear what I'm saying? Would I return? Would I go back? Because I'm still waiting on my Supreme Court decision. I had been found guilty, given 6 years in the state penitentiary. I got to go back now for my Supreme Court decision. I could have easily walked away. I could have easily went to Mexico or Canada or Cuba or someplace. But no, I saluted him. And I told him his wish was my command. I got faith in the God that he taught me about. I believe in the God that he taught me about. Yes, I returned. I walked back in prison. Walked back in. And they looking at me with their mouths open because they all knew I was supposed to have been dead, and they all knew that they was a part of it. But I walked back in by God's grace and waited for my Supreme Court decision. And I was vindicated. Vindicated.